I think we're live. So here we go. All right. Hello, everyone. I am excited to be with my colleague here, Ben Killoy, the dad coach. And my name is Brian Anderson from Fathering Together. And we're here to talk about what dads really need. I think we're live. So here we go. All right. Hello, everyone. I am. Okay.
We were live to answer your question.
So anyway, starting over. That was nice little executed start. So we are Ben and Brian coming at you this morning on Friday, January 14th to talk about our new program, the Dad Decelerator. We are both, let me not speak too much for Ben, but I can say that we are both former disengaged employees. And by that, I mean, we've been in jobs where we weren't acting on our fullest, most best potential. We weren't being challenged, or maybe there wasn't necessarily an option or a pathway for us to get promoted due to a variety of situations. But also we were overworking ourselves and being very busy without necessarily being really productive. And so we've both found, we find ourselves now in a very different position. Is that fair to say, Ben?
Correct. We both had to go on the inner journey to really ask ourselves the hard questions that most dads bury themselves into work to avoid.
Yes, that is a great way of putting it. And this pandemic, I feel like, has just amplified all of that. When I came back to working in my house in March of 2020, I buried myself in work because I didn't know what else to do. I was struggling, and it impacted my wife and children and the relationships I have with them in ways that I'm still kind of working myself out of. And that challenge, I think, is just magnified so much because we see headlines all the time now with burnout and great resignation everywhere. But I've also seen some really amazing people reframing the great resignation and reframing burnout to something that can be positive. And how do we take that pause and look to a brighter future? And I think that's what you and I are trying to do with the Dad Decelerator.
It kind of reminds me of the last great pressure test that we had was the Great Depression. And then on the heels of that, we had World War II. And on the heels of that, we had a generation that decided to redefine what living looked like. It was an invitation to redesign your life. And we had the 1950s, which, for good or bad, created a different way and a different hierarchy of what would matter for people within those families. And I feel and I hope that the same pressure test that we're going through now with COVID will give people the insights to hopefully redesign and, as a society, redefine what families can look like within the workplace and no longer have the American culture defined by being workaholics.
Totally. And having the flexibility to be at home when we need to and not needing to commute hours on end every day, every week, but instead really being focused on integrating the skills you can do from home for your job, as well as the skills that you have for your family in your home, and having that totally blank on the word, efficiency, right, of life, so that we can
Perspective is the word that I hear in that, like, because most men just don't have a perspective on life because we've been told our only perspective we need to have is keep your head down, do your job, you go to work, you provide, and like that is your place in the world, and that's where your value is found. And as dads redefine fatherhood and being more of the mom role, if for a stay-at-home dad, completely changing the world up, or if it's just one who wants to have a more active life with their kids, these are different ideas that don't follow the standard norm for the last 50 years.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned, the 1950s, and there's this myth that, our grandfather's generation, more so than our fathers, stayed in their jobs for years on end, got the pension and retired. And while there's definitely dads that did that and men that did that, there were plenty of dads that were shifting around jobs and making do with the jobs they could find to make the most for their family. And this kind of mentality of go, 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 always needing to achieve and accelerate towards a goal is, on one hand, really great because you're providing and you're supporting your family. But as you just mentioned, it's also disconnecting men from the emotional connection that we need to have with the people that matter most in our lives, or at least I would hope matter most in our lives. And so with the Dad Decelerator, we're going to be breaking it down into 4 parts to help us slow down and take stock in what that really matters for all of us. And what that looks like is integrating our personal and professional responsibilities and identities, refocusing that attention on what matters most, recharging, because we're all pretty burned out, we're all exhausted. So how do we recharge with strategies for mental health, for work efficiency, what have you, and then reconnecting with the relationships that are going to help us thrive in those personal and professional spaces. Part of why I founded Fathering Together is recognizing that we have relationships all around us, and they can be helpful and life-giving, or they can be draining and leaving us in the dirt. And I don't want to live in the dirt. I don't want to be gross and disgusting. I want to be in a place where I feel excited and alive with the relationships I have.
Brian, you reminded me of something. I want to pause for a second to address one particular person. So there's a dad out there watching this video right now in the corporate world. And I want to ask you to look around in the experience of the corporate world that you've experienced and ask yourself, do you know a dad that buried himself in the corporate ladder only to climb the top and realize that his family was left behind? And maybe by the time he got there, he had no relationship with his kids. He had no idea what they wanted to do. And maybe his whole life exploded either through divorce, his kids no longer wanted to do anything with him. And those dads exist in the corporate world far more than we'd ever want to admit. And most times, those dads don't get called out because they're doing what they've been told. And no one's going to call a dad out for doing what he's been told. But we all know, and we've all seen that dad that's climbed the ladder and left their family behind. There's the opposite is true. There's many people in corporate America at the top, CEOs, that value family and create a culture of the opposite. But there is, and also a sub-pandemic of a culture of men focusing on the career, climbing the wrong ladder and realizing they started on the wrong one from the very beginning. And by the time they get to the top, they can realize it's too late.
Yeah. Yeah. I was lucky to have a dad in the area that focused on family. He left a business that he had started because it was not healthy for him, not healthy in the bank book or in his time with me and my sister. And it coincided, I don't know necessarily, causation here, but you may remember the song Cats in the Cradle by Harry Chapin. I feel like all dads know this song because we hear it at some point in our journey, where it's this song about a dad who was going fast paced, got to his career goals, but his kid kept saying, "Hey, let's play catch. Let's do this together." And he said, "Hold on, not now, son, I'm busy." And then the moral of the song at the end is he is older. He reaches out to his son to say, "Hey, I'd love to spend time with you now that I'm retired." And the son is doing the exact same repetition of, "Not now, Dad. I've got a lot going on." And we get so busy, right? We get so busy with reaching goals, reaching key performance indicators, that we don't take that breath in the day to say, are these the right key performance indicators for me as an individual and the family that I have? But to some extent, is this the right key performance that I need to have in my work career and what I'm striving for? And if we don't take a moment to pause, then we just keep going and going on a trajectory that may not be effective for anybody.
What I hear in that is also this idea of accelerating towards these big goals, accelerating towards more money, more status, bigger house, keep up with the Joneses next door. Consumerism tells us we need to collect more things, which is why we have created the opposite effect of accelerating. That to actually be dad, you need to defy gravity and slow down, because raising a kid and being a dad is not measured in 90-day goals. It's measured in 18-year time spans for the first season. The season doesn't end until you're 8 feet under. And so this idea of slowing down to realize, what's the long-term 18-year vision of my family? How many people in business have ever asked, what's the 18-year vision of my company? Most people, within 6 months, the vision has already changed because business moves at such a fast pace. Yeah. Nothing in family moves that fast of a pace except the memories that you've missed. And those are the only probably times where we feel like, man, that went by fast. But really it's happening in the moment by moment time at a really slow pace. And then you realize when your daughter or your son is 16 years old and you see a pattern of disconnect, and you realize, man, this disconnect happened when they were 6 and I wasn't even paying attention.
Yeah. And thankfully, if they are 6, right? If you're listening to this and you're the dad who is climbing that corporate ladder with a 6-year-old, it's not too late, right? Like, part of my journey and why I went full time when I did with Fathering Together is I was working a day job that I was happy with, not necessarily excelling at, and building this thing on the side. I had my side hustle like so many people have. And I was putting my daughter to bed, and she's like, Daddy, you know, you keep telling me you're helping dads be better dads, but you're not being a good dad for me. And it just killed me inside. Here I was thinking I was doing all the right things to provide a better life for my child. And all she wanted was for me to be not stressed and have a great conversation over dinner or read a book before bedtime, like we did when she was a little girl. And when she said that to me, it was just like the door got slammed in my face. And I decided, okay, I could keep going the path I am on and further estrange my daughter, or I can just say, you know what, I got to stop something. I have to say no to aspects of myself that are keeping me from my family and say yes to my family. And I don't think a lot of us have the opportunity or the hard knock to the forehead like my daughter gave me to make those changes.
So, Brian, I wanted you to tee up for us and the people listening to this. When we designed the Dad Decelerator, which is what we're going to dive into next, there was a specific design within where we knew change begins. And we know that it starts in a certain spot within a company. And this Dad Decelerator is focused on a particular type of person in the corporate culture. Tell us why we decided to focus there versus anywhere else.
Yeah. So I come from a ground up kind of person. I've done grassroots organizing and community organizing work, and it's great. I fully believe in that form of organizing. But in the business world, true leadership comes from the top. And if top leaders aren't making the change, are not setting the culture of what expectations need to be for their staff, for themselves, then real change is not going to happen. I've had many conversations with businesses that are looking to create space for parents to have support in parenting ERGs, caregiver ERGs, you name it. And when I bring up the conversation of a dad ERG, I get crickets a lot of the time. And I'll ask, do you have a paid leave? Do you have this or do you have that? And they'll say they have a lot of company policies, but no one's using them. They're just policies on the books. And so we want to reach out to those dads that are in senior leadership positions who are high performing, that have a vision for where they want to be, to create space, not just for themselves, but also for the people that look up to them, for the companies that they are crafting a culture, so that it's not just one person making a change, because you can write that off as a heretic or a crazy harebrained idea. But if it's a sea change happening within a company, then you're seeing a system-wide change. And that's what we're looking for in the long run.
And I also can experience from my own journey that awakening a dad in the middle of an organization to the power of fatherhood and then being on a lonely island, that is just as dangerous and depressing, because
Yeah.
you realize you have this vision, you have these new realigned values, and you look for those values within the culture that you're in, and you don't see them. And so that can almost create the opposite effect. So that's why when we set out this, we weren't just going to decide that we needed to focus on helping every single dad. We needed to go to a particular spot to create real change in the corporate structure going forward. And that's why I'm both really excited to dive into this, because the more we have talked about the Dad Decelerator over the last 3 months, the more we believe that this is truly going to redefine company cultures with fathers in them. And more importantly, give them a reason to stay in a company culture, because when a company invests in a dad, not just so that they can earn more money, but so that this person can go home and be a better dad, not for what the company can do, but for what the family's going to do generations down the road, because dad had a chance to come home. That it's this basic day that we've set up with 4 parts to kind of lead us into it. So maybe you can walk us through what we've set up, Brian.
Sure. Yeah. Before I jump into that, I also just want to double down on what you just said. Like, so often we've been focused on the professional career growth and what we can do to grow our professional identity, that we struggle in growing our personal identity and the skills we need to have. And when we create that dichotomy, in some ways it's a false dichotomy, because good communication skills in the office are just the same as a good communication skill and playing at home. And so in this 4-part process, we really want to kind of help dads translate the professional life that they have into the personal life, and navigating who you are in part 1, where you are in your life, whether that's in a career that you're at or a position you hold. Where are you? Who are you in that space? Then recognizing in part 2 the patterns that keep you there. sometimes they're great patterns, right? We don't want to say that everything is wrong. Sometimes you have some really great patterns, but there's always things that are missing that we are often blind to because we're just so stuck in our rut or so focused on getting through the day that that outside voice can sometimes illuminate something in our path. Then in the afternoon, we're going to talk about where you want to go. What are the goals you have for yourself? What are the habits and patterns that you can be creating to get to those new goals? And one specific thing we'll work with you on is creating that personal board of accountability. When I was first starting Fathering Together a number of years ago, this was a piece of advice that a mentor gave me. Find key people in your life, professional, personal mentors that you can call your board of directors for your life. And you kind of connect with them, check in with them so that they can give you that advice and feedback to make sure that you're accountable to what you set yourself up to be. And finally, before we leave for the day, part 4 is bringing it back to the relationships. Who are the people that are going to be impacted by the new change? Whether that's your boss, people that report to you, your wife and children, we have relationships all around us. And we want to make sure that we're thinking through the impact that changes you have for yourself will have, and the ripples will have outward from there. So yeah, that's the 4 days.
And there's an idea within all of this, like designed in the bottom, is by harnessing these 4 parts and getting them in the correct alignment, you're actually going to do something that most people never consider. We all know gravity goes up and down, but we don't actually ponder very often the size of an object, which actually can create its own gravity, like Jupiter or any other planets where gravity really can pull something. We understand that what we're going to create is an idea in the future, an idea of who you are, an idea of who you're becoming by realigning who you want to be, realigning your priorities, and actually creating a gravity that not just pulls you toward the future, but your entire family towards this vision. Because when you harness gravity in the future, remaining where you are is a lot crazier than where you want to go. And so you're going to make those changes. You're going to have something that pulls you towards waking up in a different type of state, connecting with your kids in a different way. And it's this leveraging gravity in the future and creating a gravity big enough to pull you and your company into a place that you've never been because you didn't have this missing piece with dads alienating their families by what they wanted to do the most, but incorporating it into their life on a whole cohesive basis, essentially, to make everything align and bring them towards that bigger vision. And when I've been talking to dads over the last 5 years, gravity is one thing we're missing. We do not have something pulling us in the future. If anything, we have the past holding us down, and it's like a ball and chain of maybe an old story, an old belief, and that you just need to learn to let go. But letting go of it doesn't actually do anything. You need to understand where you want to go and what's going to be there. And there's an analogy that I'll wrap up here with that often what we miss in life is a GPS. We have some maybe ideas of where we want to go, and we try to go there on our own. But the problem is we can't see our own blind spots. Often we're like trying to drive down the road with beer goggles on. We're distorted. We can't fully see where we need to go. And we often know those roundabouts where you get in them and you get put into the wrong direction and you end up right back where you started. And you're like, I wanted to go there, but I ended up right back where I started. It's because those patterns that you don't realize are kind of intertwined into your life to get you back to where you started, which is why GPS, why we always have Google, but Google needs 2 points in order to get you there. And what we've set up today is to help you, Brian and I, be that GPS to get you where you want to go.
Yeah, love that. I love that analogy, Ben. And I also named that that Decelerator itself is a 1-day program, right? And 1 day is not going to change your life. We know that. Habits have been studied and researched, and 1 day of new behavior is a great start, but it's not a sustained start. And so by being a part of the Dad Decelerator, you're also setting yourself up for long-term success because we're going to be walking with you. We've got additional meetings after the fact. We have a whole network at Fathering Together to tap you into so that the goals that you create for yourself, the new habits you want to bring into your life are going to be held. There's going to be accountability along the road after the fact, because again, we're all on this journey together. Fatherhood is not a solo sport. It may feel that way sometimes, but when you're in the most isolated moments of your life, that is just an opportunity to reach back out to another dad. And the network we've built at Fathering Together, which is over 100,000 strong around the globe, every race, culture, and creed, we're all in this boat together. And we want to bring more dads into that through this Dad Decelerator program.
I wholeheartedly agree, Brian. And it's The biggest lie men have been telling ourselves for the last 100 years, ever since the Industrial Revolution, when we were told to go into the factory, is that we were wired to do life alone and that we should keep the thoughts to ourselves. And for the last millennia, we've done life in tribes and communities and with other people. There is always a mindset that I always like to describe as a barrel of monkeys, having one hand up and one hand down, that you're always learning to ask for help from people ahead of you that already have figured something out, but realizing there's someone that just started the crucible that you figured out, and they need to know the help and the pathway through. And it's that togetherness is how fathering was designed from the very beginning. And it's something that we've lost over time. And by acknowledging fathers in your workplace, you're acknowledging the most important thing that dads have, and understanding how you could already create a network within your company for how dads can have a barrel monkeys mindset of finding the right people ahead of them, but then also helping people that maybe just brought home a new baby.
Exactly, exactly. And I don't want to not end this without acknowledging that through this pandemic, we've seen a gross imbalance of moms taking on the brunt of care at home and leaving the workforce in droves. And this is another opportunity for dads to step up and say, hey, let's be more creative. Let's think of new solutions so that if my wife is the one that is going to be accelerating in her career this year, I need to be decelerating and showing up more at home. And this opportunity through the Decelerator will allow us to think more strategically about the tools we have in our arsenal of well, the tools we have in our arsenal of tools is what I was about to say. But what I really mean to say is the hard skills that we learn in life are definitely hard, but the soft skills of communication, of building relationships are far harder. And it takes time to cultivate that. And as you said, Ben, we've been kind of indoctrinated over the last several decades and years to think about ourselves as all in and all encompassing for ourselves and not leaning on and building relationships in a stronger network. And so I'm really pumped about this new opportunity that we're creating, and I just can't wait to share it with other people. So where can people find out more and get involved, Ben?
You can go to fatheringtogether.org forward slash empty tank. Fatheringtogether.org forward slash empty tank. All the details are there, and the button to register and get your limited supply of tickets for our in person event in Evanston, Illinois.
Awesome. So if you're watching this and you're unsure of yourself, go check out the details on the site. There's a link to contact us as well. We'd love to talk with you ahead of time if you've got questions. And we look forward to seeing you on the 4th. Ben, as always, great to talk to you. And I look forward to seeing you on the 4th as well.
You as well, Brian. And every time we talk, I get more excited because our journey has been more aligned in the last few months. And I'm really excited because what we got here is going to catch fire and change the world.
Totally. Totally. All right. Well, until then, I'll see you.